Welcome to the Core podcast. This is a pretty good one and pretty special because it's with our co-founder and CEO, James. Not many people get to see James as we get to see James, as a friend, as a father, and as a business owner. And I actually even learned a lot in this episode and didn't realise we both had a similar career path of selling fish. His at Sainsbury's and mine at Waitrose. But you'll get to learn a little bit more about this. I think this is a really good start of potentially our own little version of a Diary of a CEO. But for you to enjoy, here is James Cunningham. James, welcome to the podcast. If anyone doesn't know who you are, could you introduce yourself?
I'm James Cunningham, co-founder and CEO of Course Cloud.
I think it's fair to say, because I've worked with you a long time, you're quite a young CEO, fairly young. You started the business quite early on. I think you were 28 when I met you, 27?
25, actually.
25? Wow.
Oh, no, you met me 28.
Yeah, okay. So 25 when you started that. Most people are just getting out of university, probably still living with their parents. What could you tell us a little bit about you and why at 25 you were inspired to set up your own business?
Okay.
Bit of early career, like that's quite ambitious. That's quite a big thing to do. Like not many most 25-year-olds are quite comfortable in like their first job.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, it was quite a challenging time actually when I was quite young, and I had to grow up quite quickly. So probably at the age of 12, I got my first job, and it was as a paper round. And I used to live in a very small Oxfordshire village, and at that time, I pretty much any money, if I wanted money when I was going to 13, I had to get it myself really, and I think that taught me quite a lot. I think, I was working pretty much every day. As soon as I could get a job after that was in Sainsbury's. I don't think I've ever not had a job really. And I think, quite a lot of it comes down to your work ethic. And I think, even as a child, I used to kind of walk with a paper round at freezing cold at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and you'd see some really some posh toff guy or something at the top of the road, revving up his Maserati at that time. And I think I used to always say to myself, I used to always see this car, and I used to always say to myself, I want one of them, or something similar. And then like the Sainsbury's thing, I think everyone's kind of had that job, or where they've been at McDonald's, or I'm not saying that they're at the end of the day it's not a bad job. It taught me a lot. I learnt a lot at Sainsbury's, but I think at that time it was actually quite embarrassing, because I started off with stacking shelves, and then after that it was on a fish counter, and that was
I got offered a job at Waitrose here at the fish counter. I didn't take it because I didn't want to smell. Did you smell?
Well, I absolutely stank.
I cannot imagine on a fish counter. Yeah. I don't think I might have to do that as some social content. Yeah. Those fish, they can throw the fish really fast to each other. Let's see if you can still do it.
Well, I started off with stacking shelves, and then there was this job, and it was getting paid more. And to go on a fish counter. But that was the early days of then camera phones coming out. So where I used to go to school, and where I used to go to live, that was, I think my mates used to literally come to Sainsbury's at the weekend just to take the mick out of me. But every Saturday, Sunday, any opportunity, any shift I could get, I was working, whilst also trying to get an education, which, to be honest with you, I started to realise that that really wasn't for me. Working, and I suppose understanding the flow of how business is done, really, things cost and so on, and I just wish I was taught profit and loss in maths. I
You
probably
don't
would have
get-
got an A star.
You don't get taught that, do you?
No, unfortunately not.
No.
But no, I think, you know, I a lot of hard work back then, and then, you know, as I've developed over the years, you know, I think after then I kind of left school quite early on, put a suit on, walked around every single recruitment agency I could find.
Did you know what you wanted to do then?
No, not at all. But actually, well, no. What happened was when I was on a fish counter, there used to always be these reduced, you know, the reduced aisle.
Yeah, like the yellow stickers.
Yeah. So
Whoopsie and Asda, that's what they're called.
well, the manager at the time basically said to me, "Look, if you can shift as much as you can, it actually helps us as an organisation. So
Okay.
basically, can you try and sell some of these?"
Quickly.
And then I was literally doing these stickers, and then I basically, you know, try and really sell fish, and I get rid of them. I would get rid of all this rotten.
What was your
Going on.
What was your hit?
You look like you could do with some fish tonight, or something similar. You know, it was.
Instead of chicken tonight, you need fish tonight.
There was all sorts of stuff coming out of my mouth at that time. Anything to get the deal done. But yeah, that was when someone once said to me, "You'd be good in sales. You're good with people." And then my family, I think I went to a party, like a dinner party. Well, no, it was like my cousin's party or something along the lines, and my uncle and auntie said at the time, like, "You've literally circulated the whole area. You've kind of got to know everyone. You're really good with people." And I think, you know, I started to realise at that point, you know, maybe if I try and use that in terms of a career, then, you know, and I think that was it, just treating people how I would like to be treated.
Yeah.
And then really trying to deliver something that maybe someone doesn't have, or you know, obviously it is sales, but I think that everyone sells in some sort of way. No matter what you do, you know, whether you work in a 9 to 5, you're trying to get a better career path, or you're trying to improve what you're doing, in some way, shape or form, you're selling yourself or selling something. So yeah, and I don't think you should be ashamed of saying that you're good at sales, because I think it's a fine art as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's situations you've been in that I've seen that I'm thinking, I couldn't do that, or I couldn't have said that, or I couldn't have had the confidence to have. And you're good at reading people. Like, you're good at, like, when I'd be like, "Oh, they've said no," and you're like, "Oh, they haven't really said no, Kelly." And I'm like, "Well, they just said no," and you're like, "No, they're telling me that I want a different way of that put in front of me," where, like, everyone reads things differently. I think you're very good at a no, and then realizing that that's not a no, they're just asking me to position it differently, or at a different time, or
Yeah,
you don't hear no as no, and that's not a negative thing. You see it as a more of like a stepping stone, or the next challenge, or a hurdle, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think probably the hardest job I ever had was when I got my first job, and it was actually in a call centre for American Express. I had this dialer on my head, and it was and my working hours was 11 in the morning till 8 at night. And I had half an hour lunch, and it was basically this script that you had to read off, and you had these people come through on the phone, and it was just I cannot explain to you how horrible it was, and it was like you literally have to read off this script to people, and I think my pitch at that point was, you've got 30 seconds to listen to what I've got to try and sell to you, or just put the phone down, because I actually can't. It was on this dialer system.
Yeah.
And I actually was the best performer there, and I think that was at the age of 17, 18. I only did it for 6 months.
How did you have such a thick skin at that age, though? For someone to, like, because I guess there was probably not some nice people on the phone, but some weren't so warmly receptive of your call. Like, how did you not? And I would have taken every call personally. So how did you not take it? How are you able to? I don't know.
I think you shouldn't really take. If someone doesn't want something, if you're trying to provide someone with something, and it doesn't fit what they want or their requirements, and they say no, why should you take that personally?
True.
You know, do you go into DFS in the first sofa that someone shows you? Do you say, you're not gonna, are you? You want to make your own decisions, And I think that you have to assess the situation that you're in, or the product or the service, or whatever you are potentially looking to buy. I'm talking from a consumer perspective, but if you're looking to get something, do you really want someone to force that decision for you?
No.
Maybe help in terms of making you understand what you're getting yourself into. What are you buying? What are the benefits? And what is it going to deliver for me? Then, yeah, 100%. I think that's where someone in sales plays a part. But yeah, I did that, and then I worked in a company called ITGS, which essentially was generating meetings for enterprise salespeople in the technology sector. So
that was your first step into tech.
Yeah. I basically, again, I just put a suit on, went around every recruitment consultant in the centre of Oxford, got a load of interviews. I was very close to going into like a gym sales role because I was so sporty.
Yeah.
But
So why didn't you?
Because I looked at the markets at that time.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 18.
And you looked at the markets. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what 18-year-olds do.
Yeah.
So you went for the market rather than love. So that's interesting. Yeah.
And I think the top kind of the growth area was pharmaceutical, and then secondly was cybersecurity. And pharmaceutical for me is I didn't really particularly want to sell drugs for a living. So cyber, I started to read up on it. I started to understand, started to try and figure out, a little bit more around it, because I understood what it was. I liked technology at the time, but these are the days where it was WebSense, Surf Control, really quite legacy platforms which you don't really see a lot of today, or they've been swallowed up and changed names and so on. But that's what I had to do. But my boss at the time, she was really good. She coached me, she supported me, and she educated me on the technology, because she knew that I could, I suppose, do the business and the sales element. And my job was to generate meetings, and I was quite successful at that. Yeah. And then I then moved into a more reseller role, which was great fun. Really had a good time at that business. Learnt a lot. Worked with the likes of Sophos and other technologies. Okay. And yeah, I think I've learnt a lot over the years, whether that be selling fish, selling identity fraud for American Express, generating meetings, or reselling solutions. And then I suppose this idea of this place, I always dreamt of having my own business. I always thought that I could probably do a bit more if I put my mind to it. And I think there was a certain time in my life where it was right, yeah, now or never. And I just went for it, really.
And that went for it was with Mark in Ibiza?
Yes.
The starting of the conversation was as that.
Yeah.
And you convinced him to be your business partner. Then what?
It took a lot to convince him. He went out there, me introducing him to everyone as my business partner, and he would be like, no, I'm not. And then he came back saying, all right, okay, yeah, I will be. So. And
then you're 25 at this point.
24.
What did you do? You just were like, I'm gonna open it. How did that start? Like, I know it started in his living room, but where did you even begin picking up the pieces? He would sit on. I remember this sofa clear to this day, in the corner of a sofa. But pretty much doing what Sophie does on a day to day with me now, with a laptop and typing away whilst I'm pacing up and down. I can envision it. Yeah, blurting ideas. Were you kicking a football at the same time? I wasn't kicking a football at the same time. His living room wasn't big enough at the time, or else I would have. But yeah, no, that was it. That was the start, and then it was terribly hard at that point. Every single day, even now to this day, you learn something new
every single day. And I think that anyone that walks through business and that thinks that they are anything different to anyone else in this industry or any industry from a business or a business leadership perspective are quite wrong, because for me, even now, recruiting people like yourself and others, I learn completely different views and opinions or landscape of anything. We recruit people that are better than us, not worse.
No.
And you want to encourage that and develop them and be a part of a journey together. And I think that's kind of really where we're at right now. But yeah, to say it was a journey is an understatement. I mean, those first 2 years were hell. I think I've eaten more baked beans on toast and eggs on toast and literally whatever I could afford. I even had to go on housing benefit because I couldn't afford really anything, and got support.
Was a bit mouldy as well.
I went from a lovely flat to renting a room, which was quite a change, with like 4 other blokes. And to be honest, I'm actually going on a stag do with one of the guys that I lived with at the time, Dentist Dan, the Palace fan. That was weird. It was very, very weird. And then having a bus pass, I used to have to get to Farringdon, where our first base was, which was like a industrial estate type office, and it was no bigger than. I mean, this is like twice the size of the room that we had at first, and to literally sit opposite Mark all day, every day, was just torture. So
it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's just torture. But yeah, that was the start, and then it was 7 days a week, around the clock, really.
We know statistically most startups fail.
Yeah, it's quite a lot, quite a high number.
So what made Quarter Cloud different? And you worked hard, you had the grit, okay, but what would you say was the other magic sauce that you two had at that time that meant you survived? Was having each other helpful?
Yeah, 100%. I think, in any partnership, the number one, any partnership in business or in anything related to business, I think the absolute number one thing is trust. Customer, consumer, vendor relationship, partnership, supplier, whatever it is. And and most importantly, your business partner, if you do go into any partnership with people in business, because, you go through battles, you go through challenges, you go through emotional periods, you one day you love one another, and the next day, I mean, it's like a marriage, and then the next day you literally want to rip the guy's head off. But yeah, I think, the fact that we are such chalk and cheese helped tremendously, because I would say I'm probably I'm the one that will keep you up at night, and the one that will put you to sleep.
I always called you mum and dad. So if I really wanted something shiny or to go fast or quickly, I'd come to you. And if I needed something a bit more level-headed, reassuring, or bit safer, I'd go to Mark. Go to Mark. Yeah, just you're kind of like.
So the boring one.
No, you're just very yin and yang, calm. I think you had different. I don't know. You had different qualities and different things about you.
Yeah, 100%. Still do to this day.
Yeah, like you're going 100 miles per hour, and Mark is a little bit behind it, but that's kind of good, because if you were both going there, no one would be behind.
I mean, also, one thing I'd probably say, hats off to Mark, is that some of the crazy ideas over the years that I've had, that some have failed, quite a lot of failures. But I would never call anything a failure. It's what you've learned from that. And then when you push on and you think, right, okay, well, next time I do something like that, I'm going to think of X, Y, and Z. I think that what Mark has always done is supported that vision and those risks that you take and support me in it, and believe in me. I think that's really important. And just as much as I believe in him, quite recently opening up a Sweden office, I think when I turned around to him after and he's like, what
are you doing? What are you adding to
we've
the
just
mix?
signed up to this massive monstrosity of a building. Why do you want to open an office in Sweden? Well, there are multiple reasons, but just a love for IKEA.
A love her for IKEA and Ken.
Yeah,
And we love
Ken's a good man.
Although we did an interesting interview with him today on the podcast, and I didn't realise the reason that he got into cybersecurity was the hospital was hacked when his child was really sick. And that's what started it all.
Oh, yeah, I do know about it.
Yeah, I
well,
didn't.
no, not about the hack, but no, okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a reason that he'd got into it. Okay, so Mark was a big thing. Grit, hard work, 7 days, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What did you see in cybersecurity, or was there a particular trend? Like, I know there's probably some failures or some products or some solutions that didn't quite land, but what were things do you think you did get right that made us kind of go quite quick?
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the big ones, but I thought of was probably we were on the very early stages of GDPR. Now, at that point, I looked into digital forensics tools.
I remember this.
Which I was looking at, and I thought, in terms of GDPR, the main thing that people are going to need to know is where their data is, who has access to it, where does it sit, what is it? And then if someone asks for it back and asks, what are you doing with it, that they have the ability to, get that information, then respond quite quickly. Worked quite a bit in the financial sector, worked with quite some large organisations, one of the largest recruitment companies globally. But then I realised quite soon after that it is very, very difficult to manage and to use in an organisation in terms of digital forensics. It's not a simple task. Indexing a load of data, using an e-discovery tool, then trying to pull off the information in terms of an individual, and then redacting, and then all this kind of crazy stuff. And I call it crazy stuff because when you talk to people right now, you certainly talk to a lot of cybersecurity professionals. It's a great thing to do, but it's not an easy task. And I think that's when I started to realise probably, GDPR was a huge marketing push, I think, actually. I think everyone had the fear of life that every organisation would be hammered by every individual leading up to it. But actually, not a lot changed.
No.
I think that it put some emphasis on kind of your processes and tools that you use and how you handle data. But did it really make any exponential change? I personally don't think it did. I mean, people may have different opinions, but that was actually
the appetite didn't change, did it? So you couldn't force people to buy something if the pain wasn't there.
I think it wasn't so much forcing someone to buy something. I think it was more about is it the right sort of platform for an organisation to be using? And I think that soon started. I very quickly started to realise following that kind of venture, really, and I would call it a venture because I was up and down the country meeting with lots of new customers around this. That lots of people wanted to do it, but it was a great tool that we were suggesting at the time, but really, did you have the resources to be able to manage it? And I think the more and more I started talking to people around that, the more and more I started to realise what is it that is the biggest challenge within organisations. And I think, from a cyber perspective, we always talk about resources and so on, but I think it is. I think it's, it's the amount of people that are skilled enough to be able to react and respond to threats, threat actors. And I think that was when I started to think about how can we find technology to enhance an organisation. How can we find something that'll support a stretch team that isn't really growing anytime soon, but data, information, people, devices, the IT environment, cloud was growing.
Yeah.
So as that grows, you need to grow from a cyber perspective. Massive shift at the moment. I've seen a huge one recently around, and that's where the kind of the 4 key pillars kind of come from. And it was down to a journey that I'd gone on with customers, with very close customers of ours, and it was all very, very. It was the same problem, or I shouldn't say problem, same challenge for the customers that we were talking to. Is have you got a challenge at the moment around visibility? Yeah, I'm looking at a seam or something like that. Right, how many people do you have to manage that? 2. How many devices? How many people? 10,000 devices, 15,000 users. Like it's not a lot. I'm like, right, okay. So and that's in a healthcare environment, and then you work with a very large bank that's very well known in the country and globally, and they've got 200 SOC analysts, rich in terms of resource to be able to manage it, but then they've got so many different devices, so many different platforms. So then you look at it, and it's actually the same problem, but it's just flipped.
Yeah.
So it's like
too much.
It's like you've got a really under-resourced team here that need to understand if something comes in, how do they deal with it, and then you've got a highly resourced team that cannot deal with the sheer amount of alerts and challenges across all the platforms and all the technologies that they have in place. So that was the start in terms of, I would say, the journey in terms of visibility, and that's part of all your marketing.
The 4 pillars would be visibility, validation, governance control, and automated response. Okay, what are you most proud of today, and what do you hope is the future of Core to Cloud?
I think there's always a bit of a milestone that you hit in business. I think probably it was after the 5-year period, hitting a specific revenue number, which I didn't, in my wildest dreams, think at first would be possible. I think the problem is for me is that I don't particularly reflect back on anything that I've achieved in any way, shape or form. It's what's next, and I think probably I would say opening up 2 new offices, this place, I would say actually I was practically in tears at the opening of this place. However silly that may sound.
No. But seeing the logo on the back and you watching the ribbon, I think most of us were pretty welled up.
Yeah. And that was an amazing feeling. And I think the Sweden office, when I was out in Sweden and then agreed to getting that up off the ground, going and finding an office and spending time with our sales manager out there, Ken, that was again that was an emotional moment for me, because it's just a whole new challenge. It's like you're starting it all over again, which is great fun. And also then Scotland, and I think probably the proudest moment would be, I don't know, I think also the kind of sales kick-off and, when you got everyone there and you think, right, crikey, I remember the days when it was only a couple of us and then there's like, I don't even know who that person is. So, or that person is quite a good feeling from that perspective. And I think that's probably never going to change because there seems to be new people that come into this place every month now.
Okay, so to close, I could probably go on for ages. So I'm going to look at Sophie and see if we can book another one in. But anyone is a 15-year-old version of you currently in a Sainsbury's fish store with the same ambitions and same dreams, what would you say to them?
Don't do it. No, I'm joking. I think in anything, whatever situation you're in, whatever age you are, if you have any form of ambition, if there is something that you're dreaming of or thinking of, don't let time get in the way. Don't think because you're not in the right position financially or however it is, because I certainly wasn't in a great position when I started this place. Just go for it. What can you lose? I mean, if you've got that ambition, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, if you've had the drive and determination and I suppose guts really to give it a go, then if you can't achieve it on your own, I mean, you can try again and try again, and there's no failure in that. And if that doesn't work out and you've had enough, then I think any sane employer would hire you.
So come work for Quarter Cloud on that note.
Yes, but I'll beat you at pool.
Yeah, we have got a good.
If I'm ever in it.
Yeah, if you're ever in the country. On that note, Sophie is staring at us because you have your next meeting. So thank you, James, and we'll speak to you soon.